I think Minnesota is doing quite well. And I'm aware of it because when I retired in January from the LGBTQ task force as their faith work director, I got inundated with a lot of opportunities to tell my story. And much of it had to do with the fact that Minnesota has been a unique place for the trans community from 1993 on, when the human rights law in Minnesota became the first in the country to include the trans community. And it's been a fascinating experience to watch now, almost 30 years later, that it has become a non-issue. I think many of the people in the trans community and the LGBT community probably don't even remember or realize that what our status is. And yet, as the trans community becomes sort of the punching bag for conservative politics across and particularly in conservative states, we are in a unique situation where our rights are protected. And it's been a interesting experience to realize that when I get on a plane to travel to another state, I may be going into a hostile environment from the standpoint of my status as a trans woman. And it's getting even more of an issue as laws seem to just unfold every day from different states about how can we limit or exclude the trans community. So there's a lot of concern and fear among the trans community about whether you're young or old, about what it means to be living in that particular environment, that state environment. It's refreshing and rewarding to call Minnesota home. Know the work that is being done to keep our protections in place, work done by Outfront Minnesota, work being done by Rainbow Health and all the other organizations that have committed themselves to continuing to make Minnesota a place where our equality, whether we're transgender, nonconforming, or LGBT, is protected. When I came out at basically about age 60. So the human rights protections in Minnesota were already in place when I came out. But I watched fearfully about what was going to happen and was thrilled that the opportunities to expand ourselves were able to be put in place. At the time, I was president of the City of Lakes Cross-Gender Community, which at the time was probably the largest of the trans organizations, more a social support group than anything else. And it was a group of about 400 people as members. And shortly after the law was passed, I realized that we were beginning to lose membership. And it dawned on me that what was happening was that people in the trans community who really only had the CLGS, City of Lakes Cross-Gender Community meetings to express their true identity. Now we're finding that they can go wherever they felt comfortable going. And more. One of the things that got me heavily involved was in particularly the aging issue was that I was a member of Spirit of the Lakes United Church of Christ. And we had members who came to Spirit of the Lakes as trans people simply because I was a member there. And one of the members on a Sunday evening went home and suffered a stroke. And in order to get treatment at both Hennepin County and at the VA and at the rehab center, had to basically go back from being her female persona, Gail, to being Glenn, her masculine persona. Even though the law was in place, it was one of the issues that people had was, I understand that I could have fought this, but when you're suffering a health issue, you're not going to want to rock the boat at any place. So we realized that there had to be more done to help people understand what the issues were for the aging community within the LGBT community. And so we formed an organization called GLBT Generations. And our fiscal agent was Outfront Minnesota, and we did some really good work in trying to get trainings going. Training to Serve, which is now a part of Rainbow Health, came out of the work that we did to get curriculum involved and to get speakers involved to help senior care providers understand the fears and expectations that LGBT old folks had as they progressed into being more dependent on others for care and service. So that also led to the housing project that we were able to put in place, Spirit on Lake on 13th and Lake Street in Minneapolis. In September, it will be 10 years old. And it's just incredible to understand that this is something that we were able to put in place. I've spent my career doing work around aging and faith issues, and was blessed to be able to spend 14 years doing the faith work at the LGBT task force. So I've had a really broad experience both in Minnesota and across the country in bringing issues of faith and senior concerns to a much wider audience.